Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first season of Vintage Club Conversations. Today, we have with us Andrew Johnston. Andrew has over 15 years of experience in sales and business development and has spent considerable time developing his expertise in the tech space with leadership roles at companies such as Twilio, Scale AI, and now Superhuman. Welcome, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Manisha. Really glad to be here.
Great. So, looking at your journey so far, it looks like sales caught your attention very early on in your career. What got you hooked onto sales?
Yeah, I think it was a natural evolution. I've always been a very people-oriented person. And actually, funny enough, I started my career coming out of university and school thinking I wanted to be in the entertainment business. So I actually, if people are familiar with the show, I'm gonna date myself, Entourage, I wanted to go work at a big Hollywood talent agency and be an agent for Hollywood stars. And so I actually did that. I went and I was the Lloyd of the show for a few years out of school, and really learned about deal making, learned about working with different types of personalities. I took that and then went into a role at a production company and kind of got my first foray into tech, doing business development, working with our general counsel. And then I really made the move of saying, I want to be in tech sales. I want to work on these types of things, and I want to move over into this world full-heartedly. And so that led me into my move of my first BDR role at a small tech company in Los Angeles. So that was kind of my evolution. I think I've always been oriented towards business, been oriented towards the people aspect, and I love deal making, love like the thrill of the win and the chase. I was in sports growing up, and I think that's a big part of kind of that moment of wanting to get a deal together. So anyway, I think it runs in my blood a little bit, but it's certainly been an evolution to tech sales specifically.
Interesting, you spoke about enterprise tech, right? So, tell us a bit about your experience in building and also scaling sales teams at enterprise tech organizations. What are some of your learnings?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is doing things deliberately, and that took me some time. I was given the keys to an enterprise organization. I was an enterprise AE at Twilio. I kind of rose through the ranks, and then I was made the first enterprise manager. So I built out the enterprise team at Twilio. That was my first launch into building enterprise and building a team. And I wanted to move very quickly. It was like, I can't get enough reps. I can't do this fast enough. And I think what I've learned is, especially in enterprise, it's one of the old sayings of go slow to move fast. And it really is important that you get not only the right hires, but the right process in place. And I think that's in particularly true for enterprise and that motion, because you have to be very deliberate about the tools you use, the process and the way that you're qualifying opportunities, the journey that you bring buyers through a conversation, and then how you lead them into hopefully a potential contract. It has to be very deliberate, and that starts with the people that you hire. And moving too quickly and hiring, in some cases, maybe the wrong people, put me in a position to have to then go backtrack and slow down deals later on, which is something that you want to do, given that you don't want to do, given these cycles are already long in of themselves. So a lot of learnings, but I'll pause there and then happy to dive into any specific area.
Sure. So, since we are still in early H1 of 2024, right, I would like to talk a bit about your previous year and what 2024 looks like for your sales organization at Superhuman. To start with, right, I mean, from our last few conversations with other SaaS leaders, we are getting the sense that the growth of SaaS companies has started to pick up in the last 2 quarters. What is your take on this? And how do you think this changes based on whether you're selling to an enterprise player or an SMB one?
Yeah. Over the last even 3 or 4 months, I've noticed a general pickup in terms of interest starting from top of funnel. We've seen more companies, especially at the mid-market to enterprise level, even inbound and reach out to Superhuman on their own, which I don't think was happening when I first started. Certainly June of last year at Superhuman, and really was kind of nascent, before that in prior companies during that 2021 to 2022 period, very, very slow. Also seeing budgets unlock. I think budgets are unlocking, with the right tooling and the right things. I still see, CFOs, CTOs, or buyers focused on what is the ROI. They're very particular around how do we make sure what
Yeah.
I'm buying is going to pay off? I think they're moving slower in the sense that they're saying, let's do a pilot or let's do a POC. Let's gut check the metrics of what do we think is going to happen out of this tool? Does it actually happen over a set period of time? And if so, then we'll purchase, an agreement, but that agreement may be smaller. And so I'm seeing more of the classic, seed, land, and expand motion that, was popular for a very long time, but I think got wiped out when, 2019, 2020, people were just saying, I'm going to buy XYZ tool or XYZ thing for my entire organization. And then they had shelfware. And so I'm seeing a lot more deliberate action against how people are buying, but I do think interest has peaked up and I do think budgets are unlocking.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that value-based buying is now actually becoming very, very serious. Fair. So coming to Gen AI, right? Gen AI is catching on in a big way across function. And it looks like 2024 is going to be bigger for AI, especially in sales and pre-sales. What are your thoughts on this? What are some of the other trends you think we will see in sales in 2024?
Yeah, I think around Gen AI, I'm definitely seeing there's this huge interest, right? And it's kind of ballooned, and I still think people are in a place of how do I use it? Where do I use it? And I think there's also the question of is it safe in certain areas of like what data am I giving up? Where is that data going back? How is it training models? And so I think that's a question that I'm especially seeing in enterprise organizations. I do think, I'll agree with probably a lot of other sales leaders out there that if you are not looking at how to adopt Gen AI tools into your stack, whether it's, a feature functionality of a tool that you already use, or it's a new, first of its breed tool that is Gen AI first, I think you're going to get behind very quickly. And I'll give you an example. I'll use Superhuman. I'll even use SiftHub. I think if you are a sales team and you're competing and you're not using things like ChatGPT or you're not using a tool, like Superhuman that embeds AI, you're going to be slower to respond. You're going to move slower inside of deals. And if that's a competitive situation, you might not get the customer first, or you might have a more responsive competitor, or your form you're completing for a questionnaire might be less complete. And so I think there's these notions of how can you do more with less, but also how does the responsiveness and the customer experience or the buyer journey inside sales improve using these tools? And if you're an organization that is not willing to adopt them or willing to adopt them more slowly, I think you're going to get behind very quickly and you're going to lose head to head with other companies because they're just able to have that extra edge using this tooling. So I think that's number one. The other trend that I'm seeing, some of it relates to that is, again, how do we increase productivity by rep and efficiency by rep? So I think the days of large sales teams are over. I think everyone's thinking about scaling in a very smart way. So, if teams are going to get large, how do we make sure that we're doing that in a sustainable way? What is the payoff for each rep? What does that efficiency look like? And then how do we augment them with tools? I think that's going to be a really important factor. The cost of sales and doing so in a really sustainable way is going to be key. We're doing that at Superhuman. So I'm thinking about how do I make sure my reps are selling in a way that supports them so that they can take on a lot of customers just up to the brink, and we're using tooling to help support that. So those are some of the trends that I'm seeing. I think Gen AI is a huge boom, and I think we're starting to see some of the tools come to ground that are going to be really effective in sales motions.
Right. But with this, Andrew, so what we have seen is, today's sales teams are bombarded with a lot of tools, like
Yeah.
literally at every stage of a deal life cycle. I mean, how would you can tell us, how many tools does your team use, right from first point of contact with a prospect to closing the deal? And what are some of the challenges you see in managing these tools?
You're absolutely right. To answer your question, I think we probably use something in the neighborhood of 7 to 10 tools. If I'm trying not to count on top of my head, but it's all the typical stack. We have some new things that are probably unique to Superhuman because of our business model, but it is way too many tools. I think that's why you're also seeing, in certain cases, the large orchestration layers like the Gongs of the world, who are now starting to consolidate. They're building more feature functionality. So Outreach, Gong, Clary, they're all getting more competitive with each other, so they can be kind of a single point platform for things like sales forecasting, call intelligence, sales engagement platform. But I think in general, there's an appetite to lessen the number of tools, but then go deeper on tools. And so certainly the way that I operate with my team is I look at on a quarterly basis, are we using the things that we have? Are we using them most effectively? And I would rather go deep on 3 or 4 tools than have 20 that are just kind of sort of helpful. And I think, the problem that comes with more tooling is that they don't often speak well to each other. And so, if you have 7 or 8 tools across the sales cycle, does the one top of funnel speak to the one at the bottom of the funnel? And is the data and are the sentiment shared across all those tools so that you can pull down information? And I think that's the biggest problem I'm seeing is the orchestration across tooling and making sure that information is shared appropriately and clearly and then fully. And if it's not, you often lose that context. It ends up slowing you down in the deal, or information isn't captured at the data warehouse layer, and so that it's lost, and then you can't action on metrics or things that are coming up in your sales cycle. And so that's the biggest problem with more tooling is just that, do they talk to each other? Are they interconnected enough? And then can you pull out analytics and metrics from those tools in a full scope space to be able to iterate your sales process in the right way?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, especially, when you're selling to mid market or enterprises, the sales cycle are not like a week or 2 weeks, right? The sales cycles are from 30 days to 6 months' time. And if you don't have context of what is happening in the top of the funnel to bottom of the funnel, then it might just get more difficult for salespeople. Okay,
100%.
so let's talk about the goals and priorities you have for your sales org in this year. What do you want to achieve this year? Will you be changing any of your existing processes or tools to meet your goals?
I think that the 2 main goals of my team this year, I mean, let's get the obvious one out of the way. We've got to drive more ARR. So trying to increase our new ARR through expansion and also new logos that come in the door. So that's one that's probably a constant for many sales teams. But the two top level company priorities that we're really focused on that touches almost every organization, but in particular go to market, is driving NRR, increasing our NRR across the business. We've found that contracted accounts, especially larger contracted accounts, have a much higher stickiness, a much higher NRR, and typically expand a lot better. And so how do we do more of those types of deals? So that's priority one. And I think when you pair that with how do we move up market, they tie very nicely together, right? So as you move up market, as you land larger mid-market deals, as you land enterprise corporations, those corporations typically have a longer stay with a company. They don't switch tools as often. They make deeper buying decisions. And what that means is that they're going to expand hopefully more naturally and then also more long-term with the company that you choose. And so a moving up market is tied very closely to increasing NRR. So the way that we're thinking about our tool stack is how do we have the right tools that support that motion? So do our tools give us the right analytics and metrics, as we were just talking about, to make sure that we can iterate our enterprise sales motion the right way? Do we have things that really complement the enterprise buyer journey? So the way that they want to approach us, are we meeting them where they're at? And are we able to support things that they're asking of us to get that motion going, whether that's top of funnel and, things like InfoSec all the way through how we're doing pricing and packaging and supporting that motion and contracting and legal. And so we're looking at a tool stack that supports that upmarket motion for the more complexities that come with selling mid-market, strategic mid-market and enterprise organizations.
Wow, that's very interesting. Right from, as you mentioned, right from InfoSec to price packaging, what has now happened is buyers are already coming prepared with 80% of the information on the product. And then the 20% is actually taking 80% of the time of sales and pre-sales people to answer, be it complex pricing or be it, nitty-gritties of the tool of, let's say, Superhuman, right? I'm sure there are a lot of hidden features on how Superhuman can actually be used by different teams. So yeah, sales and
Yeah,
pre-sales team now need to get more smarter and more technical in terms of catering to buyers' questions.
yeah. I think just to add to that, Manisha, one thing I think is super interesting is enterprise cycles have always been long because of the amount of work that you have to do on the process and system side. I always say that if you want to be an enterprise seller, it's more about your ability to like be really gritty and sit through processes and actually enjoy some of these like deep in the weeds things like infosec, like working through legal, like working through complex pricing and packaging. However, what I'm curious on is, can we actually take down enterprise cycles and move faster as we get more advanced tooling, because some of that tooling offloads the price, the process that is required to sell those deals. And so maybe, and I'm hopeful that enterprise cycles will go from 12 months down to more closer to what we've seen in mid-market, because they can move so much faster because we've got supporting tools that help us get through those processes quicker and serve those customers better. And we can focus on the product and how it helps and drives ROI for the end customer. So something that I'm curious if that's going to happen, but if it does, I would be very excited for that world.
Yeah, I think not just for sellers, even for buyers, right? I mean, if there is a set of tools for both sellers and buyers talking to each other, like bots talking to each other, making all the decisions, asking each other questions, and then finally, salespeople come to sign the contract and finalize the deal, is when the sales cycle can get shorter and more deals can happen by a single salesperson. Great. So this
Yeah.
was a very insightful conversation, Andrew. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. It was great catching up with you, and thanks again.
Thanks so much, Manisha. Talk to you soon.